So with that, we'll go ahead and see if we can check in with our team here and see if we got everybody. And back again is Christopher Pellegrini.
Are we on? Hello.
We're on.
Can you hear me?
There we are.
Hey,
There's
guys.
everybody I was looking for.
How you doing?
How are you doing? You're still awake too.
I am still awake. I think I'm probably doing a little bit better than you, though. I haven't been awake for like 6 weeks, as you have.
We just keep rolling. We just keep rolling. Thanks for staying up with us. We're on this marathon here. We've got a fantastic team. We're so lucky to have this group with us here today. I'll let Christopher, I'll pass you the baton and let you kind of go around the horn with everybody here. But Ryan, Don, Chicago, thank you so much. We've got everybody in all different time zones in all different corners of the globe. And I know, how challenging, how trying things are right now. And so I can't thank you enough for setting aside time to join us for this session here at the summit. So thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah,
thank you.
I will go ahead and Christopher, I will go ahead and pass the baton to you and let you get things going, and we'll connect with you here in 50 minutes-ish or so.
Okay. See you in a few.
All right, we'll see you shortly.
All right, take it easy. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sake Future Summit. This session is all about the future of shochu around the world, in bars, in your favorite cocktail joints, wherever you happen to be. And I'm pretty excited. I'm actually kind of nervous right now for the first time today because we've got some legendary folks to join us. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves one by one. But just so that you know, we have Chikako Ichihara-san here, who actually happens to be located in Japan at the moment. And we've got Mr. Lion himself here beaming in from London, and then Don Lee, who happens to be on the East Coast of the United States. So thank you, everyone, for your time and your minds and your experience. And I'm so excited to have you all in the same Zoom. It rhymes anyway. Ryan, can you start off? Can you give us the
of course,
the profile?
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you so much for the introduction. As introduced, I'm in London at the moment, and I'm usually jumping around the world a bit. I'm in a fortunate position at the moment where we have venues across the world, but given the current situation, I'm in London. But I mean, I've been in the bartending world for a little over 18 years now. So I think over that time, I've kind of tried to cover every part of the hospitality world. So started in kitchens and has moved into bars and worked from everything from kind of dive bars and nightclubs through to fine dining and hotels. And then over the last almost a decade now, which is kind of mad to think of, we've had kind of our own kind of collection of projects under the kind of Lion moniker, which has now spanned to venues in London, Washington, DC, and Amsterdam. And again, throughout all of it, really trying to look at the kind of human stories behind food and drink, but also trying to find different ways of presenting them and doing them in a slightly different way. So it was very exciting for me to be able to join the team at the JSS and travel to Japan and visit some of these producers in creating incredible shochus, which makes it very exciting to be able to pick up this conversation and have a discussion around the table with everybody here.
No, thank you so much for joining us, Ryan. It's a pleasure. Chikako, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Chikako Ichihara. Usually I live in New York. I have been in New York for almost 30 years. My father is a chef, and we owned a noodle shop in Japan. And then I moved to US, and then I married a chef. And then I ended up to really into Japanese cuisine and spirits and the world. And I'm so fortunate to work with JSS. I'm now is the liaison office in the JSS, Japan Sake and Shochu Association.
Right.
And one of the reasons I have a passion to introduce the shochu almost 17 years ago, no one really talk about it. No one really pay attention. But I'm really keep hoping to that kind of opportunity to introduce shochu And then we really start working for 4 or 5 years now in JSS. And I met the incredible for these bartenders and so excited to visit together, learning together, and then experience together. That was really like, now is my kind of life mission to introduce the shochu in the world.
I love it. That's music to my ears. Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Don.
Yes.
Welcome.
So my name is Don Lee. I'm based here in New York City. I'm probably best known for having made bacon bourbon, and sadly, that's probably going to be the thing that's on my tombstone one day. But you know, it's nice to have a modern classic cocktail that everyone knows you for. But I'm also was the product designer for Cocktail Kingdom. If you've seen Cocktail Kingdom bar tools, I'm the person who launched all that with Greg Boehm all those years ago. And most recently did a project with Dave Arnold called Existing Conditions. But besides, you know, working in bars for about 15 years, a passion of mine has always been education, mentorship, and just communication. I think a lot of us, when we become bartenders, part of the reason we do it is because we love that interaction with guests, with customers, and to be able to share stories with them. And it's, you know, you can learn a lot from a book and you can teach somebody what you learn from a book, but to go to a place and to experience it firsthand really gives you a different, you know, experience and a different way of telling those stories and a really visceral way of telling those stories. So I was very fortunate in that I got to go to Japan last year with Chikako and visit, you know, so many distilleries and, you know, get to meet these amazing producers. And now I get to share these stories with everyone.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think that Chikako-san, you've actually toured Kyushu with both Ryan and Don, is that right?
Yes, for 2 years.
I really wish that I had been a part of that. I wonder what was up with my scheduling back then. I'm kicking myself 2 years later. So Chikako-san, can I just start with you because your experience, it very much relates to what Don was just talking about the stories and telling these stories. You approach bars from the other side though, don't you? You're coming into bars to communicate with bartenders in many cases, right? And to get them excited about that. What are your experiences with that?
Well, first of all, everybody's talking about Japan's national spirit, but everybody's confused in sake and shochu. And then everybody's talking about, okay, shochu has to pair with the food. But again, when I was in New York, and the shochu is a spirit, not wine or sake. And we have to really distinguish between sake and shochu. So I was really talking with actually Alan Katz. He's also founder for the New York distiller. And he really recommended, I really should go to the Tales of Cocktail to learning about the spirits in the US industry. So I was really keep asking to JSS and they decided to go there. Then I really learned about what is a spirits industry. It's completely different from the wine industry. The spirit, it's really like a similar kind of chef world because I'm kind of a background with a chef and
yeah.
My husband is a chef. So then they're really making craft cocktail is really understand the balance of the flavor and how they really mix and perfectly balanced. It is very difficult to do it. Then I was so into that people were making cocktail, then I think we should really approach to the bartender. Probably they are more understandable about what is a shochu. That's why we are really going into the Tales of Cocktail for 4 years. And then I met the Don, and then we went to all like starting tours. And then immediately I found out when we bring them, and they just immediately realized that how complex of flavor, depth of flavor, so much variety. And then when they saw for the production process, they knew koji is the key. So I was so, like happy, they really understand that. This is the most important experience for me, to working with a bartender, introduce the shochu.
That's fascinating. Ryan and Don, I mean, what to play off of what Chikako-san just brought to the conversation, what made shochu click for you guys?
I mean, from my perspective, I think it was, I suppose, getting the depth of that understanding. You know, there was little bits of experiences I had in the past, and either through being in a Japanese restaurant and seeing the traditional serves as, you know, having it alongside food. But I think it was, you know, really meeting some of the people behind it, being able to taste the variety and seeing it kind of in context, but also side by side. You know, it was being able to have, you know, in the UK, I hadn't come across the wealth of styles in one go like that. I hadn't had the ability to go, well, this is the difference that black or white or yellow koji can make to it. This is the difference that the different starch bases will bring to the table. And then, of course, all the people that we met and their passion and their own approach to how to produce these spirits. And I think it was kind of seeing that in, obviously, the beautiful surroundings of Japan and traveling to see these different regions and producers. But I think it was being able to bring it all together and see it as a category to really realize the kind of the breadth of it and the depth of it, and seeing what there was as an opportunity from, you know, not just the kind of classical applications of it as a spirit, but, you know, therefore what there could be done with something that was as wide as a category as it was.
Mm. Yeah, it is pretty diverse, isn't it? Sorry, Don.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. I was just going to say that, you know, for me, it's almost exactly the same thing. You're already exposed to so many other spirits, and, you know, you go to any bar and you'll see that there's this entire shelf of whiskeys, and every category of whiskey will have a different shelf. And so it's very easy for people to make the connection that, like, okay, if I'm get into scotch, that it's a variety. It's not just one thing, that there's blends and there's some that are really smoky and some that aren't, and have different proofs. Like, that groundwork already exists, and you can learn that in a book about shochu and say, okay, there is this big category, and, you know, you can see that, you know, it's this region in Japan, but there isn't a place normally, for at least not in New York and or anywhere I've been to, where, you know, it's a bar that has, you know, all the varieties and all the different styles, and then, you know, we'll explain that to you as you try it. So if you are someone who's just getting into whiskey, there are whiskey bars you can go to and do whiskey flights, and, you know, you can try all these different things. That doesn't exist for shochu, at least not yet. And so to have that experience, you know, that was really eye-opening to get that, and, you know, to get that in Japan, you know, from the producer themselves. It's, you know, even more, you know, you get the real story behind it. And as Chikako mentioned, the thing that was most interesting for me is this koji. There's lots of other distilled spirits out there, and I've been to a lot of distilleries, but I've never seen anything like the koji production. So that really opened my eyes to a whole different category of not just distilled spirits, but here's another ingredient I can use in a bar, and here's another process I can use in a bar that I was really excited to bring back and share.
For those of you out there in the world who aren't very familiar with shochu, the easy definition is that it's Japan's indigenous spirit that is made from approved ingredients and their koji. Fortunately, we can just use the word koji as is. It seems like people generally, through their experience with food, and correct me if I'm wrong, people kind of get what that is. At least they've seen it on a menu these days in many cities, or it's getting that way. But, you know, you were able to experience these drinks through the actual context of where they're made, the people that make them, the culture of that place, the environment, everything. Now that you have this experience and this knowledge, can you think of where these spirits sit on the world spectrum of spirits? We're talking about a single distilled product, single pot distilled product that is in, you know, can I be so bold as to say terroir driven, made with koji? What are the corollaries? Do you have any insight into that?
I think the easiest thing for people to latch onto is kind of two different ideas. One is that it's very neutral compared to a lot of other spirits. So it is more like a vodka than like a whiskey. The other thing that for a bartender, especially if you're talking to somebody who understands all the different categories that are out there, it's actually closer to mezcal when you look at production and terroir and the fact that it's this single distillation, that it isn't, you know, watered down other than from that distillate. So it is much more like mezcal. It's just that it's not made from agave, and it's, you know, made from the you know, the things that are indigenous to Japan, and it is all the subtle flavors that you get from, you know, coming out of Japan as opposed to coming out of Oaxaca.
Sure.
I think there's also there's an opportunity with not kind of pigeonholing it into other categories. I think, you know, there's a real opportunity at the moment, given the way that interest in kind of spirits has risen, but also the professionalism and the spread of education, thanks to people like Don and a wealth of others, of kind of really helping connect people to look deeper into the craft. I think there's also an opportunity to not, yeah, of course, it's much easier to relate things to established knowledge or context. And so it's kind of like a a white spirit. It's got elements of this kind of connection to the land, like a mezcal. It's got this savory element, like you might have come across in Fino sherry or sake or something like that. But I think there's also, you know, for bartenders at the moment, it's not the need for it to be simplistic. There's actually a real excitement by having something that's completely different to what has been the bedrock and the foundation of the cocktail world, traditionally the Western cocktail world. And so I think there's a really nice chance to kind of go, well, okay, we've built up this base of knowledge. We understand what whiskeys are and the diversity that can be in each of these spirit categories that we know. It's an opportunity to look to something completely different, a different source of flavors, a different terroir, a different, you know, as Don alluded to, a different production method. And I think, you know, that's what's exciting for us as bartenders is getting something new to play with for our craft, but also then something new that we can help kind of connect to our guests. Because it isn't as simple as being able to go, okay, it's kind of like a gin, but a bit like this. You know, it's
right.
nice that you get to be able to open up a different dialogue, because it is different. And I think that's kind of really exciting for us. And I think it's also an opportunity because it doesn't fall into a simplistic category.
Chikako-san, I'm curious about the strength of brand Japan when you bring the stories of these drinks into new places. Is talking about the fact that this is a traditional spirit from Japan an effective way to communicate the quality to people who have never heard of it before?
Well, I think it's the keep simple, keep authentic, and I think it's very important to showcase that. I don't want to really change it. It was so much history behind, and that's that I don't want to bring for the new category. Well, it's new category for the Western, but I think we should really explain what is the behind of the shochu. It's all like a history. So I prefer to keep the tradition.
Okay, that's a very interesting comment, and with the loaded word authenticity, right? This will make people's brows furl. It's a great way to start an argument at a dinner party throwing this word around. You know, we've been talking about koji, which is the microorganism that sacrifice starch in the you know, you can't really use fruit or anything with ready to fire glucose to make shochu and awamori. It's grains, it's tubers, it's kelp, it's water chestnuts, it's matatabi, which is called silver vine, which is basically, it's catnip on steroids. These are things where you need the help of koji to convert those starches into sugars first. The koji thing, you know, and both Ryan and Don, you both said this is really interesting, this is important. How do you communicate that?
I mean, I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I think there is, you know, you talked about this a little before. I think the way the knowledge around food has risen so rapidly of late, I think people have come across it. It might still seem a slightly exotic word to people, and they might not understand the mechanism of how it's being used, but it's no longer just it's not an alien term. And so I think there's an opportunity to, I suppose, stoke that intrigue. You know, that it is, and you even alluded to it in I suppose, brand Japan. Like it's got a certain like kind of cool and exoticism to it, and particularly as it's become very in vogue in kind of very high-end culinary circles. I think there's a chance to kind of engage people, and without having to spout like too much technical terms. Like we all love this as a product, so we're into the geekiness, but that doesn't mean every guest will be. But there's easy ways of translating some of those details, and I think the uniqueness of it, the regionality of it, but then also I suppose relating it to other I suppose, well, partly other things that they would have come across in, the malting process in other spirits world, but also other foods that have used koji as part of their production. It's a chance to kind of connect them through an intrigue, and also that uniqueness. So I think people are, on a whole, very interested by that point. It's balancing the right way of demonstrating to them how important that is to the product, and how amazing it is part of the traditional history of it, without going too geeky and keeping it in a manner which is actually still kind of connecting the intrigue.
Right. I think that, you could really get into the geekiness, as you said, like, that, you use the word sacrification. That's not a thing that most people understand or, really want to talk about. But if you tell them, there's already this idea, and as Ryan said, like this brand Japan, right? That there's a spectrum of things. And so if you say like, okay, what's the easiest thing that people already know and are familiar with? Shoyu, soy sauce. Okay, most people will have that at home, or at the very least will have a little packet from some like delivered like sushi that they've got, right? And then like on the next step up, it's like, okay, miso. I know that it exists. I've heard of this miso cod, maybe I even have it in the fridge and I cook with it myself. And then it's, okay, what is the next thing that's out there? And, it isn't widespread yet, but, koji kind of is that thing. And it's also the secret that bridges between both, shoyu and miso. It is the key, like magic that happens that makes those things what they are. And then you use the word umami, something that most people have heard of at this point. And then, you start, making these connections. So without even getting into the, how and why enzymes work, you can just start making these connections with things that they already know. And then, as you said, terroir, you say, okay, imagine something like, blue cheese. This is something that exists like in a cave, and then, magically goes into this cheese. It only is in this region of France. It's, there are other things that already exist out there that you can make that connection to. And it's similar enough, and it's evocative enough that it's intriguing that people then want to know more. And, if they want to know more, then we get real geeky.
Yep. I like it. That's absolutely right. I mean, without koji, you don't have Japanese cuisine.
Well, it's interesting in koji, being Japanese, we didn't really realize, I didn't realize how important koji is. When I tripped to Japan, then I realized koji is really part of our culture, or like our product based on the fermentation, it's koji. So when actually I was with Don, he started really talking about the flavor balance and parallel fermentation going to start to the sugar. And then he just say, it is the kind of I can do using like the cocktail needs a 3 component, sugar, sour, bitterness. That sweet part can be koji. Then I was really shocking. That was really think about out of the box, because because a part of our culture, we are using fermentation product, but I didn't really think about koji itself to how can we use the flavor to koji to more flavor to add it, that one component. That is blowing my way. And he was really teaching me about koji. Actually.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chikako-san. Let's actually hear a little bit more about cocktails. I mean, I think that's one of the main points of getting this crew together. So, what's your take on Shochu and Awamori in the cocktail space?
I think to take kind of a step behind the curtain, a thing you have to realize is that most people, they don't go to a place and say, give me the thing that I've never heard of, that I know nothing about. Most people go to a place and they say, okay, I want something familiar. I'm going to a place, you know, I might want to try something new and inventive, but only because I trust this chef, this restaurant, this bartender, right? But it always starts from something that is more familiar. And, you know, in the bar business, you know, 90%, 95%, 99%, sorry, of your sales comes from cocktails that are on the menu. Every now and then a regular will come in and say, make me something new. But most people will say, give me this classic cocktail I already know and have heard of and have been drinking forever. Or I'm willing to try the cocktails you put on your menu because I trust that you make, you know, delicious things at this place. And so if you want to get people to try something, just putting it on the back bar and having it available isn't enough. You need to put it, you know, literally in front of them in the form of a cocktail so that they'll try it. And then, you know, not everybody, but somebody who will try that will then say, okay, why does this taste this way? Why is this different from the other cocktails? What are the, you know, I know what lemon juice and lime juice and sugar already are, but there's this word that I don't know on this menu. What is this? Can I try this by itself? Please tell me more. And that's kind of the entry point. So in a way, cocktails is the way to incept Shochu into the minds of people without them really knowing it.
I like it.
I mean, unsurprisingly, I echo Don's sentiments with that. And I think it's, you know, going back to what we're trying to create and help connect people with these amazing products and this history and these traditions and these stories, is to try and find ways of exactly that, highlighting the characteristics that are heart of these particular spirits. And, you know, being able to, you know, if you make a classic whiskey cocktail with something that's peated or something that's got a different mash bill, you start to notice the difference in it. You can exacerbate or play to or whatever you want to do to kind of highlight those elements of it and those idiosyncrasies. And it's very much the same with this. We're trying to help people understand the breadth of the category. So different cocktails allow us to bring certain parts to the fore, or really kind of use the texture of certain ones, or the depth of the umami in a certain one. And so I think with the cocktails, you know, with the approach to Shochu, it's very much about trying to help people understand it, and using what is familiar as a way of kind of stoking their intrigue rather than having to ram it down their throat, or just have something weird in the background that they're, as Don talked about, they're not just going to call for. But I think there is something really interesting in it, because of course you can apply it to the traditional cocktails that we know, and it works great for that. You know, obviously it's a lighter white spirit. It doesn't stack up if you've got a drink that's going to get totally buried in other bigger flavors.
Sure.
But you can, you know, we also have a unique profile to these. It's a slightly different ABV, so you've got to treat it in a different way. But we've also got, you know, I think there's contrasting elements in Shochu that's really interesting. You tend to get floral alongside something kind of deep. You get umami alongside something that's, you know, got a kind of like very kind of fruit forward profile. And so you're trying to find ways of, for us as well as creators, use those formulae as a way of connecting for our guest, but also rework how we kind of create the cocktails to treat the Shochu appropriately.
That's your point about ABV. I think that's something that's probably on a lot of people's mind. Even at its highest, strongest proof, honkaku shochu, authentic shochu, and awamori can't be bottled above 44%. It's tax law. And in fact, a lot of most product is bottled between 20 and 30. Mm-hmm. Is that an asset? Is that a liability? Is it a challenge? What's your take on that?
I mean, I think it's a challenge, but that's a positive thing. I think challenges are good things, but it's, again, I think it goes back to your point, well, what we discussed earlier about, you know, just needing to focus in on it specifically. You know, if you make a daiquiri, you know, being able to have that little bit, anything above 40%, 80 proof, it gives you room to open out the spirits. Whereas if you start with something lower, it's everything starts to kind of already be opened out, and so it's harder to give that kind of profile that you're looking to create, and to make sure that your guest has an appropriate journey to their drink. Whereas if you've got something that's starting at a different point, if you throw it into those drinks, you're gonna you potentially lose the concentration of that character that you're trying to present. So it's almost about reworking it. And this is where those lower ABV cocktails can really help. It's not that you need the high proof to be able to make a good cocktail. It's just those are suited to those traditional cocktails that were created on those spirit bases. So starting with something lower and with a different profile, to me, it's about being, you know, there is a delicacy to the textures, the combinations of the aromas. And so it's about reworking the drinks that we put these spirits into to showcase them in a different way. And that leads us down the kind of lower ABV point. That doesn't mean that it won't still have complexity and journey and like an adult profile to the drink. It's just that we have to almost use a different starting point for those cocktails.
Yeah, I think that the problem that you alluded to, Chris, is that if to an inexperienced bartender, someone who really doesn't know anything about what you can do with cocktail and certainly doesn't understand shochu, it's okay. I have a recipe that I know works, that balances. I have this daiquiri, and so I'm gonna just take out the rum and I'm gonna put shochu in, and now I have a shochu daiquiri. And that's the most derivative way you can make a drink. And a lot of people basically work using those formulas. And that does a disservice to the product itself and to the guest experience. It's not a good way of using that product. So for somebody who's not going to do the work to learn about it and to refine their craft, it is a problem. But for those of us who are really interested in shochu and in the variety of spirits around the world, it's not just a challenge. It is actually a unique opportunity, because it's not like you took something that's 40% and then just added water to bring it down to 27. It was distilled to 27 for a reason, and distilled in a different way than the way that you would distill, whether it's a vodka or a whiskey, even if it's still coming from a pot still. It was distilled differently at a different temperature, at a different pressure, so that you can get different flavors that you couldn't get in a column still going to 99% alcohol and diluting it back down to 40, or even taking it to like 125 proof and then diluting it back down and putting it in a barrel. This was meant to be this way so that you can get these specific lighter floral characteristics that don't exist anywhere else.
Yeah, this gets into the mind of the makers, the good people who are making these drinks, and how they envision it being consumed. And I think this gets back to Chikako-san's point about authenticity. And this is something that I always think about. How do Japanese shochu and awamori makers imagine that people are going to be enjoying these drinks? And I would argue, and I think you probably agree, that the first thing they think of is probably not cocktails. And that's a very interesting thing. I think they would be tickled to hear that their shochu is being worked into something creative in a foreign city, but it's also something that's very, very distant from their concerns and their day-to-day outlook on life. Chikako-san, to come back to you with the authenticity thing, do you have any experience with communicating the traditions, with talking about how it's enjoyed in Japan?
You mean in Japan for traditional, how they drink it, or?
Yeah, when you talk about shochu overseas, do you use those stories? Do you talk about that authenticity?
Yes, I do a lot. Talking about the authenticity. I think it's very important to explain what is different and how they drink the shochu. Especially, I learned a lot actually that it's of course all like a spirits drink with straight and ice with soda. It's probably it's very common, but shochu is very unique, and maiwari or iwari, that is very traditional way, and especially maiwari is a hospitality way to serve. And then when I just dilute it, it's like a week later, then taste it, most of them are shocking how smooth.
Maiwari, is that what you're talking about? The pre-mixed? Sure. Yeah,
Or iwari, in that also the flavor. And when they taste it first, just as it is, and then when added the hot water, the flavor which really stands out. And then
yeah,
shocking that
yeah,
why?
yeah. Oyuari, right? For the uninitiated, oyuari, and this is going to sound different. It's where you cut your shochu with hot water.
Yes.
And it's how I normally drink at home. You can see that I have a little bit of shochu here in my immediate vicinity. And you can kind of see back there behind one of the bottles, there's a hot water kettle. It's my approach to just about every shochu that I can get my hands on. But that's it. And I love that. But also, how does that sound to, Ryan and Don? Of course, I'm sure you've tried oyuari and you were probably like, oh my God, right? But how does that work? Can you use that in the bar?
Sure, definitely. And so first, I'd like to also mention, though, that authenticity is a trap. And it's one where you don't want to get stuck. And historically, both, shochu and sake have been stuck in this authenticity trap. It's the only time I drink sake or shochu is at a Japanese restaurant eating Japanese food. That's clearly not the case. You can have it with anything, but for most people, just because that's where they're probably going to find it, that's the automatic association that they have. So on the one hand, we want to be respectful. We want to, acknowledge the history. We want to show off the traditions and the customs, but you also don't want to get stuck in that trap of this is the only way that you could have this. And certainly, I don't want to offend any producer that, thinks that the best way to have this is in whatever way that they imagine. But hopefully when I create something, I'm doing something that if they try it, they will, really be surprised and say, wow, I didn't know that you could do this, but, I'm excited that people are using it in this way. So, using the oyuari as an example, that's something that doesn't and can translate to, a traditional cocktail bar. It just hasn't so far. So people are already, in America, at least, they have this idea that, that you can have sake hot. And unfortunately, that tends to not be the good sake, and that's a whole different problem. But at least they have this association that this is something you can have hot. Sure. And then to say that there's a traditional way of doing this, but I'm not going to give you the exact traditional way. I'm going to give it, my spin, and I'm going to turn this into a cocktail to show you there's a reason why people have this way in Japan, but I'm going to give it my own spin. So last winter, one of the things that we did at Existing Conditions was that we served a hot shochu cocktail, and we essentially used the dilution ratios that you would have in an oyuari, where you're having that, how much hot water, how much shochu, but we layer other flavors into it, and we prepare it in a way that, we prepare all our other hot drinks. So the same people who come in saying, I want a hot toddy, well, now you can try this different cocktail that's not a hot toddy, but it is a traditional hot cocktail from Japan.
So I think that's why it's so important that the first we have to introduce the shochu, and then they realize that what is this? That's the really we are trying to focus and find out the shochu. So that's why we really want to focus to the bartenders. They really can, they're magicians, they can really create the way of introduce and communicate to the shochu to the consumers.
And just where those traditional serves are useful, not only is it a wonderful way to understand, where these spirits come from, where they were used and how they were traditionally enjoyed, and the opportunity to be able to tell our own connections to those stories, as Don said, doing a twist on them. But I think because they are slightly different profiles of spirits, I think, some of those producers might, and, this was often the case, they were worried that they would get, I suppose, laden with lots of fruit flavors and all of these things that kind of mask the actual character of what they're creating. And I think what is being defined as a cocktail has shifted a lot. And being able to understand that, they were served in these ways because the profile had a delicacy, it had a certain texture, it had these nuances that they wanted people to enjoy. By getting Western bartenders to try them in that way, they get to see how the profile of this spirit, which they haven't grown up with, they haven't you have had a multitude of serves kind of drilled in through from old cocktail books. It allows them to see the way that it behaves, and so they can take it on in ways that, you know, a cocktail could simply be serving a particular shochu in a certain glass at a certain temperature. That's a cocktail. And it's just about being able to understand the idiosyncrasies of it and respectfully connect it to our guests that gives them more enjoyment. So I think, you know, for those producers, you say they might not expect it to end up in a cocktail in New York or Paris or London. But I think they'll also hopefully be like kind of pleasantly surprised to try their products in these ways, because, you know, people are intrigued by them and want to be able to connect people to them in a more interesting manner.
What about, you know, putting these drinks out in front of people just straight, put them out there neat? What if like a, you know, a Genshu, let's get an undiluted 43% really super funky smoky shochu and turn it into the new bartender's handshake. Is that possible?
I think it's about who you're connecting and like the manner in which you do it. Like, I think, you know, you stick it in front of bartenders and you like, it can be tough to taste things blind, you know, without the stories, without the context, because it's part of it. You know, there's certain things that can taste like faults in some spirits, but they're actually very desirable in others. And if you're not expecting there to be a big umami note or a big smoke bomb, then that can be slightly disarming. So I don't know if it needs to be that kind of like, just here, try this, because I don't know that's always the most effective thing. But I think being able to, of course, like, these are great spirits to drink neat. I don't think, you know, ultimately with all of these things that we're creating, we also want people to be able to enjoy and appreciate them in their purest sense as well. But I think there needs to be a framing. There needs to be that kind of context. I would love to get to the point where it could be, you know, it's a friendlier proof to be able to sit down and have as a bartender's handshake than a shot of Ray.
Sure.
So it's like, it would be like nice to encourage that connection, but I think there needs to be a little bit of work to get there to help people to understand those differences. So they're calling for a specific, you know, starch base or a particular region or something like that. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think the possibility is definitely there, though, Chris. You know, but as Ryan said, you know, if I'm expecting to get, you know, like a Chardonnay, and you gave me a Fino Sherry, you know, in the glass it looks similar, and I taste it, I'm like, oh, this is wrong, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody, you know, messed up this wine, but when actually that's what it's supposed to taste like, right?
Yeah.
So in that same way, like, you know, it's that context. So if I tell you I'm giving you a glass of sherry, you are already positioned to be like, okay, I'm going into like oxidation town, right? So you kind of need to prime them, but in the same way that, you know, that bartenders are excited about whether it's an Amaro or like a Mezcal, Shochu does have that possibility because of the variety. It might not be the Shochu that you use in the cocktail, but when somebody comes in, you know, that I haven't seen for a while, and they're like, you know, what's interesting to you right now? Very often it is Shochu that I'm bringing up, because it's an opportunity to give them something they probably haven't tried, you know, and to let them see it on its own. And that's, you know, maybe the difference between bartenders and a consumer, where the consumer comes in wanting to something safe, the bartender comes in wanting to, you know, try the weirdest thing.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that sounds very familiar. What are some of your go-tos in the bar in terms of, you know, I know some bartenders have kind of figured out, you know, if I'm using it, if I've got sweet, then I'm going to use this, or if I'm trying to make something that's a bit, if I'm going hot, then I might use this. Do you have any tricks or any tips?
Well, I kind of make cocktails in a pretty different way than most people, in that I use a lot of technology and I use a lot of science in creating infusions. So for me, the thing I want to showcase is the product itself as much as possible. So if I want to show off the shochu, I'm not going to hide it behind all these other flavors. So, you know, if I took shochu and I made a, you know, a Negroni with it, you're really tasting Campari. You're not really tasting shochu. So I'm looking for ways to layer flavors onto shochu that shows off the shochu. And for me, one of those things is to show off the base ingredient that the shochu is made from. So if you have a sweet potato shochu, I'm going to make a sweet potato, I'm going to sacrifice sweet potato using koji, and I will infuse that into a sweet potato shochu so that you're having sweet potato on koji on koji. So it's,
wow.
I want to show you this, the same thing over and over again in different ways.
That's an umami bomb right there.
Right. So that's the way that I approach cocktails, which I understand is not normal for most people.
I mean, from my perspective, it's still the same kind of thinking. It's not trying to, I suppose, lose the delicacy that makes it so interesting to me. I want to be able to take like a little bit more of a hands-off approach. And, I'm a fan of throwing weird in, but it's never for gimmick. It's got to be there to either tell the story behind a certain product, and that could be the people, where it's from, the source of what it's made from, the manner in which it's made. It's just trying to find a way to kind of leave a hook for somebody to be able to go, this is delicious, but it doesn't taste like anything I've had before. Why is that a particular way? And so you can then talk about, be it like, using like similar products, be it process or material, as Don talked about, or is it a way of, I'm going to try and think of an example off the top of my head, and I'm going to struggle, but you can connect people in different ways depending on what elements you want to highlight. And it's trying to find something that, obviously has to be delicious. And there's no point just kind of drowning the shochu out by having flavors that don't, respect its delicacy. But I think the ways in which you connect it are very varied. Of course, even we talked about the brand of Japan, having things that allude to that, intrigue people, connect them to it, be it the base materials, any of those things. These are all ways in which we can tell stories, and that's what it's about. Those are the things that connect people, and these are the things that intrigue us. We all visited these people in these places and were kind of like in awe and kind of like mesmerized by what they were creating. So we want to be able to connect people to that. If they can't travel to Japan and see it, we want to be able to do that in our venues. Absolutely.
Yeah. Connection, inspiration. I guess this is related to education. Chikako-san, I'm coming back to you with this one. What are some of the activities that you're working on moving into the future where people can be inspired and educated and connected to the stories here?
Well, right now it's after COVID and everybody's struggling right now. So we want to shift it all digital format. And we try to really reconnect it, the whole bartenders, and they can still create for their creative way of the cocktail. And then they can, each country, the Ryan and Don and all like other people start teaching to the shochu, and the junior bartenders start creating testing for the shochu. So we really want to do something, the webinar, and right now we already started to 2 times already. We connect to the London, Oslo, and Singapore, and Sydney. So now it's actually Dawn will be moderated in January. It was so exciting, and we're gonna connect it all like bartenders. And now he's teaching to the shochu and all like a bartender who went to Japan and to create a very specific shochu cocktail. And we love to everybody join and to learn about the shochu cocktail.
Yeah, I want to join. That sounds fantastic. So this is great. I also know that the JSS is working on a catalog of shochu based cocktails that they're developing as we speak, and I think will be ready to go in early 2021. So there are resources that are becoming available. But I think one theme that we've hit on here is that there is a lack of information, and it is really, I don't know if anyone said it, but we are kind of developing what is a new category for all intents and purposes. And that's a challenge, but it's a great challenge.
Yes.
And
Right now is that we have a Don, Ryan, everybody's helping us. So hopefully Don can be really good for the writing and teaching the education. So he's going to help us for the JSS. It will be amazing content.
Everybody on this call and everybody watching, you have no idea how much gratitude I am feeling right now for all of this, you know, just you guys talking about, you know, the potential of shochu and aomori and how much you enjoy it and how much you were able to connect it when you visited. And I'm just thinking, I cannot wait for the time when we can kanpai together with some good shochu wherever it is in the world. But at that point, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be because the collective efforts, and especially because of the three of you, have been able to really spread this message. And then I'm able to go to a bar in London. I'm able to go to a regular bar that doesn't have any connection to Japan, you know, and they have decent shochu. And I am going to be beside myself. I'm probably going to cry a little bit, so I apologize ahead of time. But I really, really appreciate what you guys are doing. I love your energy. And thank you so much for giving the Sake Future Summit your time today. So with that, and I don't have anything exciting to kanpai with, but I like to end with a kanpai to everybody out there. You know, kanpai and tell your friends. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Pleasure.
Excellent. And we're back here. All right. And we are back. All right. Are those guys still on the line?
We're still here.
No, did we cut over entirely? Oh, you guys still there?
We're here.
Okay, you're still there. Excellent. Yeah, I just wanted to, thank you so much. Thank you so much. As long as we kind of got everybody on the line, thank you so much. That was super informative. The chat was kind of exploding over here. And that was really informative. I wanted to just really briefly, we obviously Shochu is the focus here, but as long as we got this team on the line, I would just be curious to just kind of hear, just really briefly, obviously, the thing, you know, at the forefront of your minds is you probably got, you know, your own businesses, you got people you're taking care of that you're thinking about is kind of at the forefront. But, you know, as we kind of in this incubation period that we were kind of talking about, what are you thinking about right now with regards to bars? I mean, I don't think anybody has the answer for what this is going to look like, but just kind of what's on your mind at the moment? I'm just curious.
I mean, from our side, it's obviously it's a very tough time for the whole world. But the hospitality industry is built on bringing people together. So it is extra tough at the moment. And you know, I'm not the only one around this table who's lost part of their business to this. So it is very, very difficult. And you know, I feel very much for everybody who's feeling those effects. But I'm trying to see silver linings and, you know, different things like this. Like we've still been able to find connections, but I think it's also demonstrated the, you know, the camaraderie within our industry. You know, the world of food and drink is very close, and it's built on, you know, it's built on passion, really. The reason why we have been able to make our weird systems work is because we all love this. And it's created new opportunities for those connections, for education, and for creativity. And I think there's going to be an opportunity to look back and reassess how we rebuild things in a way that creates new foundations and new connections. And so even though it's very tough at the moment and there's some things that are still smarting, it's about trying to look at where there can be kind of positives to build as we kind of reshape everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know that, education is a huge thing for you. I know. What is there kind of a new cross-pollination? What's been kind of keeping you busy in this period, and what are you thinking about?
I think the thing that a lot of us are thinking about is when we do rebuild eventually, it's how do we rebuild something that is bigger and better? And how do we not make the same mistakes we made before? You know, all of us, we inherited the systems and the culture that existed before us, you know, in this industry. And for once, all of that has been disrupted. And we have the chance to create something new. And let's not make the same mistakes. Let's at least make a different mistake if we have to make a mistake. So let's dream big, and what can that future be? And in the way that it's become very clear, you know, in the United States and around the world, everyone's health is the most important thing. And unfortunately, those of us that work in the hospitality industry are those quite often are the least protected when it comes to health. So how do we recreate the industry in a way that we can take care of each other's, and, you know, and not only just take care of our guests and take care of the business, but how do we take care of each other and keep each other healthy?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think we've all realized, like, we're kind of all in this together at this point, in maintaining one another's health. We're not siloed off in the way that, you know, some people seem to imagine we were, you know, and so we're kind of all in this together. And so, yeah, whatever that new culture looks like, Chikako-san, hopefully Shochu can be a part of that. So we're looking to you to help to help build that, integrate that into the fiber of this new culture that we're working on. Chikako-san, Don, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Christopher, another fantastic session. Can't thank you all enough.
I had very good help on this one.
No, honestly, yeah. Thanks so much to all of you. Best of luck to you. Take care of yourselves. Be well. We look forward to checking in with you, hopefully on this little island here sooner rather than later. So take care, and we'll look forward to seeing you here soon.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Very appreciated. Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you here. We'll talk to you here soon. Take care.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't please check for the. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Check for. Yeah.
Oh, it's
Tell us.
over.
Tell us.
It's over.
Not yet.
You're still here. You're still here. Tell us. Tell us.
Check for the webinars that are coming next year. We have a lot of great
you.
information that we're going to be sharing with you soon. So
Sorry.
look for more information soon.
Okay.
Cool. JSS Shochu, right?
Yes. Oh, JSS underbar Shochu.
Underbar Shochu.
Please.
Done.
Yes.
For all the updates.
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you again. Thank you so much for your time. We look forward to chatting with you again.
Thanks,
Likewise.
Justin.
Thank
Be
you.
well. Take care out there.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.